Hey guys, what's up? Nick here once again, and today we're going to be asking ourselves the age-old question, why do people actually love Twisted Metal 2? So let's get right into it. I want to give a quick disclaimer that I promise this video is not just going to be me 100% bashing Twisted Metal 2 in the sense of my opinion is correct and you guys are wrong. That is not the case at all. This is more of a case of I want you to change my mind. And what I mean by that is I am genuinely an open-minded person. And honestly, most of the time when it comes to Twisted Metal, I am pretty open when it comes to most people's opinions. The one opinion, however, I have never been able to get over or really just understand is how so many people out there defend Twisted Metal 2 as the best game in the entire series and that they are all willing to die on that hill. And I am here today to ask you politely in the comment section below, give me your one, and only give me one, main reason why Twisted Metal 2 is the best game in the series. I really want to understand people's thought processes behind this. And with that, in this video, we're also going to go into my personal feelings on the game, of course. I'm going to give you all of the bad about the game, or at least in my opinion, and all of the good about the game, at least in my opinion. Of course, I've already stated it already, this is a very opinionated video, and I don't want that to come across as I am always correct, and this is factual. This is straight up just my thoughts, how I feel about the game over the years that I've played it, and yeah. So with that, let's get into it. We're going to talk about the bad to start out with, and then we'll get into the good later. When it comes to Twisted Metal 2, I can kind of combine three major elements into the bad section. I have a couple other points, but they're more nitpicky, I will admit. So the three main points I want to get across for the bad section are the controls, the physics, which kind of go hand in hand with the controls, and the balancing. So first of all, with the controls, my major issue with Twisted Metal 2 is going from any other game in the series, and this is excluding TM1, because TM2 really, as everybody knows, is pretty much just the better version of TM1 in a lot of ways. Now, there are some things I actually prefer from Twisted Metal 1, but Twisted Metal 2, of course, has done a lot of improvements over TM1, but in reality, it's relatively the same game with the same engine. So I'm going to kind of lump these two games together in this instance. But that being said, every car, in my opinion, kind of feels like you're driving a boat. Everything just feels way too top-heavy, too weighty, too slidey in a lot of ways. And this becomes more frustrating than it does a skill gap, in my opinion. I would like to look at games like Twisted Metal Black or even 2012 as more of a skill gap difficulty with their controls. I know a lot of people can write them off immediately and say this is way too difficult, it's too fast-paced, I hate it. But in my honest opinion, if you just give it a try and actually learn how to deal with the fast-paced nature of the game, the controls are actually really well done to the point of you can master it and do really well in the game. However, I'm not saying that you can't do the same in Twisted Metal 2. I have seen people do amazing feats in Twisted Metal 2 on YouTube and on stream and all the above, and I understand that people can get used to these controls and have a good time with them. However, even those people, I have seen it happen to them, and they cannot deny this, have run into issues with these controls, with these physics, where certain things are just out of their hand, and that is at the detriment of the game and the gameplay experience. And that's why I like to say the controls and the physics that go hand in hand are both two of the major issues I feel with Twisted Metal 2 as a whole. And another issue with the controls, and I don't know if this has to do just with the emulator version, that's the one that I'm playing for you guys here that you're seeing with the gameplay, but the special abilities just take way too slow to actually trigger. And what I mean by that is normally in Twisted Metal, you have different button inputs with a directional pad that you can input to have a freeze take place, or you drop a mine behind you, or you turn on a shield or go invisible, yada, yada, yada. In Twisted Metal 2, you have a lot of these same abilities, just like any other game, but for some reason, it's the only one in the series where you have to do it almost in slow motion. You literally have to take yourself out of the gameplay and think about your button inputs to do it slowly enough to where it actually registers. Again, I don't know if this is actually just an emulator issue or if it was in the original game. If it is not in the original game and you can type it in as fast as you want to and it works every time, let me know in the comment section below because I'm actually curious about that. But for the time being, from my experience, I want to say that this is a huge issue and it's always been a frustrating element to TM2 alongside the controls in general. And I know I already talked about the physics a little bit, but I want to get more into that. When it comes to the physics in TM2, just like TM1, everything seems to do damage to you. whether it's other vehicles, of course, or just the environment. Just running into a wall seems to take random amounts of damage depending on how fast you hit something. But even that, like, it seems random. Like, sometimes you can barely bump a wall going 5 miles an hour and boom, you lost 20% of your health. It just seems very unbalanced and to the point where it's just frustrating and it's annoying when you're going around a corner. You clearly miss the corner, but the game says, nope, you clipped it. You hit an invisible wall, you go flying 10 feet back, and you fall to your death in New York. This has happened to me countless times. I know some people can read that as, oh, it's a skill issue. You're just not good enough at the game. And to be fair, I think a part of that probably is the case. But for the most part, again, I have seen this happen to countless pros, quote unquote, of TwistML 2. And so they can probably agree with me that it is a frustrating element to the game and it's just something you have to get over with. And for me, I don't have the patience enough to really, quote unquote, get over it. So it's a detriment to the game and the overall experience. On top of that, most of the vehicles not only just feel like boats to control as, like I said it before, but they feel like you're just driving on ice constantly. And I know that this is obviously intended on levels like Antarctica, which makes sense, but then it feels like they just put it on the rest of the game to not make it feel any different. Like, there's no other differentiators between the traction in each level. They all feel the exact same, and every car feels like you're sliding on ice. You try to do a drift, and you'll just keep sliding to the right like crazy, no matter what speed you're going at, until you run into a wall and do damage to yourself. And this, again, could be looked at as a skill issue, but in my opinion, it's something you literally cannot control in the game. Yes, there is a handbrake button, which does help in a lot of instances for sure, but there still is situations where your car will slide around uncontrollably if you are going too fast, and that can just be frustrating. The last little part of the physics is that jumping sometimes just makes absolutely no sense. You can go off a tiny little ramp and your car can just kind of freak out in midair and feels like it can go 30 yards to the right and fall into a pit of doom and kill yourself. It does feel completely random sometimes. Like, yes, obviously the more you play it, the more better you're going to be at its control, and you can kind of slowly get used to the wonky physics in that sense. But overall, you shouldn't have to deal with BS or get over BS just to have a good time in a video game. And that's why, again, I personally feel like the physics and the controls kind of hinder the experience overall for the player and lead to just bad game design. And one little quick thing I will add, of course, I know not every game in the TwistML series has perfect physics. Even 2012 has its issues. Of course, TM3 and 4 have their issues with physics. But in my personal opinion, I do think 2 and 1 have the worst physics in the entire series. And I'm, of course, including TM3 and 4 in that regard. Because I can have fun in TM3 even though you flip over like crazy and it takes too long to get back up, and it is frustrating, I will admit that. But I can get over that a lot easier than the absolute BS wonkiness of TM2's physics. The last part of my 3-part section of the bad is the balancing. And this is probably the biggest, like, what the fuck that I can think of with TwistML 2. And the biggest thing that I see, quote unquote, pros and people who defend TM2 to the grave always seem to overlook, or they don't acknowledge it at all. They don't think it's a problem. And this is where I think the biggest issue is, the biggest red flag right in our face, is the balancing overall in TM2. That being said, I think Thumper's special is just insanely broken. Like, he literally can just turn it on, and if he gets you for 2 seconds with his special, you've already lost 50% of your health, no matter who you are. You can even be playing as Minion, who is by far the most broken character in the game, but it's by design. He's a cheat code. So if you're playing as Minion, you should feel badass, you should feel broken, that makes sense. But then you go against a regular character like Thumper, he puts his special on in front of you, and he takes half your health. It just doesn't make any sense. Next is Twister. Now they're broken / unbalanced in the opposite direction. They are completely useless in most cases. Yes, they're very fast, and that's it. They're very fast and they have good handling, like whoopsie-doo-dah. You can do the exact same thing with Spectre, who in my opinion is a much better character in TM2, or with even Outlaw. But with Twister, their whole gimmick is that their special weapon is supposed to be a tornado. They can suck people up into it, do damage, and throw them around, and it's super cool and unique, and I love their character. However, the way that it was balanced, for some dumbass reason, Twister is not immune to taking damage when in their Twister. I understand to a degree that makes sense, because if you're doing your tornado, you should still be able to get shot at by people who are not getting sucked into your tornado, I should say. However, the problem with this is that people who are in your tornado will end up hitting you and doing massive amounts of ram damage because, again, when I was talking about the physics, the ram damage in this game is so uncontrollable and so random. Any vehicle could basically just come up and flick you, and you've lost 80% of your health. And that is definitely the case for Axel. He is by far the most broken in this game when it comes to ram damage. He's literally the epitome of Warthog from Twisted Metal 1 that had this exact same issue. They could just run into a vehicle and kill them immediately, and that, in my opinion, is basically their special weapon. But they also have a special weapon on top of that, so it makes them even more broken. But yeah, for Twister, it just feels like they got shot in the foot for no reason. You use your special, and you take more damage than the people you're supposed to be damaging with said special. I have been told, of course, there are ways around this. You can use Twister's shield and use your special, and then thus you're not going to be taking damage from people. However, there's still characters that for some reason can still crush you, even if you have a shield on. I think Hammerhead, Minion, and Axel are like the three main ones that can still do damage to you, even if you have a shield on, which doesn't make sense to me. But yeah. So yeah, you can use your shield, of course. You can drop mines and do extra damage. Like, yes, you can do all these extra things to make Twister viable, but it comes down again, like, why should the player have to force themselves to be able to learn all those tips and tricks just to be able to play a character normally? It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, that to me just seems like they're kind of coping with the fact that Twister is a piece of shit character in TM2 and they weren't balanced correctly. Sweet Tooth AI as well is completely busted when you're going against them in tournament. I think they're just an okay character when you play as them, which is hilarious because they're put behind a passcode for some dumbass reason. But that being said, going against them in tournament mode is absolute hell. All they do is spam their special literally every 2 seconds. They don't shoot anything else at you. They might freeze you from time to time, but 99% of the time, they're just going to be shooting that stupid little floating head that not only does damage, of course, but does knockback, which is insanely frustrating with the physics of this game. So you can get hit by one special and get sent 5 feet back, and if you're on a level that you can fall off and die, it's going to happen more times than not without you even trying. It's really shitty, and it feels unfair in so many ways. And last but not least, Shadow's special going up inclines. I think this is just a glitch in general. It's something that wasn't noticed in QA before the game released, which I want to say really quick, in case you guys didn't know, Twisted Metal 2 had one of the longest development cycles out of all the Twisted Metal games. They had a ton of time to make this game perfect. And that's, again, what makes this most hilarious to me, is how unfinished and unbalanced this game feels compared to any other game in this series. And this is going against games, like, everyone says 3 and 4 are terrible, TM2 is the best. But everybody seems to forget that 3 and 4 were both made in like 6 to 8 months. Like, literally from the ground up, 6 to 8 months, complete finished game. The fact that those games were even released is an absolute miracle. And I honestly think that is a fair reason to give them a little bit more leeway into saying these games aren't as bad as they seem because of that short development time. Where in TM2, I'm sorry, but it doesn't get any pass for that because they had a lot of time. But that being said, yeah, Shadow Special is pretty broken. If it goes on an incline, it just does an insane amount of damage. And just like Sweet Tooth's AI, going against Shadow in the tournament mode is insanely frustrating because all they do is rear fire their special weapon like crazy. And of course, if you're on an incline, it's going to basically insta-kill you. It's so ridiculous. So those are just a few examples. There is more, but it's just a few examples that really every single time is the most frustrating thing. I know a lot of people are going to be like, why don't you bring up Mr. Slam with his constant freezing? That's like the biggest meme in TM2. And yeah, that's another one. But it's just, for me, these are more, in my opinion, these are more frustrating than that even happens. But yeah, that'll happen too, where Mr. Slam will just constantly freeze you over and over and over and keep using his special on you. And it just comes down to like, why was this implemented? Why was the AI made this way? And these last few points are more nitpicks than they are, actual complaints, and I will admit that. So next is not enough weapon pickups on most levels. So again, I can understand some of these can be looked at as skill issues. I know that the levels carry over all of your weapon pickups, which is nice. So if you pick up a ton of stuff, let's say like on Amazonia, before and after the boss battle, you still have a ton remaining, you will carry that over into the next level, which is really nice. However, there is still, just in my opinion, most levels just don't have enough pickups in them in general. I think health pickups are fine. I don't really have many complaints with not enough health pickups, except for on Moscow. But yeah, just in terms of weapon pickups in general, I think Moscow and Paris are the first two that come to mind. where I feel every time I play those levels, I just always run out of weapons. I don't have enough to shoot people with except for my special weapon. And that should never be the case. You should never be without weapons in a Twisted Metal game. Next up is gaming over when all 3 lives are lost without any lives resetting each level is so frustrating. I understand, yes, in today's age, we have the internet, so you can just look up the level code, type it in, and get back to where you were. And I will agree, it's essentially the exact same process as just hitting retry and starting from that level again if you lose all your lives. Yes. However, I will make one little argument to that. When you have to go out of your way to go find a cheat code, it is technically a cheat code, to go type it in to the password section to then load into a level with all new enemies going against each other to start from there, essentially, if you were to lose all your lives, I don't ever feel right doing that. I feel like the developers made Twisted Metal 2 and TM1 in the sense that if you go all the way through the game, you are never meant to get a game over. Like, if you get a game over, you should have to start from the beginning because they didn't give you that option to retry. The option they give you is to go find a cheat code, type it in, and then you can come back if you want to. But it really makes you feel like you're a shitty gamer when you have to do that. So in a way, the game was developed that you have to restart from the beginning, and I really just don't like that at all. At least in Twisted Metal Black, your lives not only carry over every level, so what I mean by that is, like, if you die twice in the first level, if you make it to the second one without losing all your lives, you get all your lives back. So not only do you get that, but if you lose all your lives in said level, you can just retry right from there. They don't send you back to the main menu, and you don't have to go searching for a level code. It's just such an easier and better experience for the gamer. It makes you feel more accomplished, in my opinion. Yes, I can understand from the other side of things where you could feel more triumphant by making it through the entire tournament without dying, and you can do it all in one go without having to use level codes. I totally get that, and I agree with you. But you can do the same thing in Twisted Metal Black. Go through the whole thing without dying once or at all without having to restart, and you feel great. Versus if you lose all your lives and you have to retry on that level, yeah, it feels kind of cruddy, but at least you're not getting shot in the face 700 times by the developer saying, haha, you suck, restart the whole tournament. So yeah, that's a big gripe of mine with TM2. It always has been. And again, I understand that could be looked at as a skill issue. Fine, whatever you want to say. In my opinion, if it leads to a non-fun experience for the gamer, it's bad game design. And last but not least, this is more of a nitpicky thing. The final boss, Darktooth, is just way too difficult, and they have a stupid final form. They should never have had it where once you defeat Darktooth, who already is an insanely stupidly overpowered boss, they shouldn't have made it where, oh, once you defeat it, oh, guess what? Now you have to fight the head of Darktooth. And this kind of comes back to my previous point of, you have all these extra layers to the final level, so not only do you have to fight like 6 enemies in Hong Kong, but then right after that, you go to fight Darktooth, and then not only that, you gotta fight Darktooth's head. I will admit the head part's the easiest part of the game by far. It's very weak, it doesn't take many hits to kill, and it doesn't do much damage to you that I remember, depending on who you're playing as. But the fact you have to go through all 3 of those giant layers of that one level without losing 3 lives is an insanely difficult feat for most people. Of course, you can do this. I have seen it many times. People go through the whole game deathless and all that stuff. It is possible. But the fact you have to jump through all those hoops just to get to the final boss and then thus go through more hoops to finish the final boss, it's just too much. It's just nails on a chalkboard at that point. In my opinion, it's just not fun. So with that, those are my main points of why I personally dislike TM2 and why I ranked it at number 7 out of the 8 games of Twisted Metal series in my every Twisted Metal ranked video. If you're still here listening and watching, first of all, I want to say thank you, even if you're a hater. Most of the people that hate on me probably have already disliked the video, left a mean comment, and left by now, and that's totally fine. But that being said, we're going to get into what I do think is good about TM2, because yes, believe it or not, I do think some things are good. The first thing is the level design, except for Moscow and Holland. Moscow can just eat a dick. We all know why that level sucks. I think even the people who love TM2 can admit Moscow sucks ass. And then Holland is just meh. It's not a like terrible map or anything. It's just like Washington DC in TM3. There's just nothing going on. It's a flat plane of grass against multiple enemies. Obviously the biggest difference though to Holland versus Washington DC is on DC there's way less enemies. It's way easier. However, with Holland, you're going against like 9 enemies, I want to say. It's just a ridiculous amount of people. Not enough weapon pickups to be frank with you. And then you get this little tiny map that doesn't have anything going on. So Holland, in my opinion, is one of the worst level designs in the game, let alone the whole series. And that includes Moscow, of course, too. But the rest of the levels in the game are amazing. I love every single one for different reasons. I think they were really creative. They had some great level destruction and just environmental things you can mess around with that make them unique and make them stand out. And I think the layout overall was pretty good. Next, the soundtrack. I mean, everybody knows TM2 soundtrack is legendary. It's amazing. I listen to it almost daily from this point because I use it as my background for my streams and all that and in my videos. So yeah, the TM2 soundtrack is just glorious. It's an amazing original soundtrack and it deserves to be praised. The color palette, I think, also deserves to be praised. I think TM1 was a little bit too drab, a little bit too dark, too grindhousey, if you will. And I think TM2 really punched it up in the color palette. It made it look bright, inviting, more fun, intriguing. I don't think it really brought anything down either. I think some people could say, oh, it's too bright and too bubbly. It takes away from what Twistmelt is supposed to be, and I disagree. I think it kind of adds to that campy nature of the endings, and they make more sense with this color palette. And yeah, I think the game just feels more inviting to play and to watch with its current bright and colorful color palette. The great roster is another big plus. I think there's a lot of great characters this time around, and they included and brought in to the table so many iconic characters that have just stayed with the series all this time. You got Mr. Slam for the first time, Twister for the first time, Axel for the first time, Minion is a playable character for the first time. I mean, this game has so many great characters and so many great backstories and endings. It makes sense why people love this game, why they have so many fond memories of it. I totally get that. It's just such a shame that the gameplay itself brings it down so much and makes these characters not fun to play as. And leading into my last point, which I already said, is the endings. I mean, the comic book style still holds up to this day. They look gorgeous. The voice acting is really good, especially Mel McMurrin with Calypso just knocks out of the park. Absolutely adore his performance. And yeah, they definitely knocked out of the park with these endings. I think they're amazing. I wish we could have got endings like this in TM1, but it is what it is. We all know the story behind that. But in the end, you kind of have to ask yourself that one question: is it worth going through all the pain that I already experienced with TM2 to get to these endings? And to be honest with you, I think it is worth it. Yes, I still stand by everything I stated about the game and the reason why I dislike it. However, I will say it's worth going through all that BS to make it to these endings, to watch them if you've never seen them before. Obviously, you can look them up on YouTube and whatever you want to do in that situation, and that's fine. But I think you still get a really good gratitude in getting them for yourself and getting through the entire game in order to watch these, because they are worth it. So that is pretty much my thoughts and opinions on TM2. I know I've talked about these exact same thoughts in previous videos and on my live streams. Some of you might be saying you're beating a dead horse at this point, and I will agree with you. But I did want to do a standalone video talking specifically about TM2 because I want to hear from you guys, especially the fans of TM2. Why do you love the game? Just why is it so wonderful to you? What's the main reason you love it? If it's 100% nostalgia, if it's just straight up like I played this the most as a kid, just say that. Just be honest. I'll probably understand that, but at the same time, I am one of those people where I feel nostalgia should not cloud anyone's judgment of how they feel about a certain type of media. If it's a shitty movie, but you're just nostalgic about it because you saw it as a kid, I think that's kind of unfair to say it's a good movie. Like, you can say you like it and that's fine, but you shouldn't defend it if people are shitting on it because it is a bad movie. And I feel the same way with video games. There are, of course, games where I think are amazing and I will defend them to the end of time because of nostalgia, but I also will 100% understand that people shit on them because they do have their issues, of course. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching my video. Hope you liked it. If you didn't, totally understandable, but either way, hope you have a lovely day. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. Before we head out, I want to give a huge special thank you to our channel members. These are amazing people who are wanting to support the channel and the content here. And if you want to do the same, you can click the little join button underneath every single new upload. And in becoming a channel member not only supports me and the channel, but also gives you a ton of perks in doing so, including early access to new content and being a part of exclusive polls and information that other people would not be able to access. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you again so much for the love and support, and we'll hopefully see you in the next one. Peace out.